Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Taejun Lee from K-Dai School. I'm very honored to make a presentation on my research. So actually, I've been working with OECD since 2015, Professor Jun Lee. And I work hard to come up with the better ideas and the better solutions for the making the transparent and society and inclusive the society and a very trust-based society, especially in South Korea. So actually, this research is very emergent and is evolving and is not mature. So actually, we are developing. So the next year, as OECD and the KDI School, the United Kingdom and Cabinet Office and the Government Communication Service will publish this report in terms of making a voice and what kind of governance system and what kind of institution and what kind of policies and remedies are necessary to make a great country in terms of enhancing and public trust and social capital in our society. I want to be as obedient the presenter to Professor Taejun Kim, so when necessary I skip the slides. Please understand. Basically, this slide shows us the way we are standing in terms of public trust in government. Actually, the last year, 2 years ago, an OECD and KDI published this report, Public Trust in Government. Actually, we are seeing and facing declining level of public trust in government. Okay, in other words, the people do not trust in government and public institutions very much. So this is very big the headache and the problems to the good governance and democracy. The communication and the media services are very important to regaining the public trust and legitimacy of public policies and government institutions. So based on this literature and this work, the KDI School and OECD developing kind of solutions and remedies and intervention programs related to public communication and the media, the ecosystem services, to boost up and increase the confidence in government and public policies and institutions. So anyway, we are living in a very disruptive, technology-driven society. The 20 to 30 generation, totally different kind of media usage behaviors and communication, the style and the communication, the lifestyle. So the government sector must be able to change the nature and the programs and the strategy and the services. The communication service targeting at this kind of age cohort. But anyway, and Korea and the G7 countries, they fail to communicate with the young generation and the vulnerable population and the unique population of the citizens with a very different the media and communication style and communication behavior. The slide from the Sustainable Governance Indicator Report, the Bertelsmann Stiftung, 2 years ago at the KDI, they work with this institution, to make good ideas. What method would be good to have a good relationship, transformative relationship, and a constructive relationship with the citizens from a government side. At the time in 2015, the declining the quality of democracy and increasing polarization and the deficit in governance, the capacities, one of the key the problems we are facing, the less societal consultation and a more confusing policy communication and increasingly the weaker media coverage. Let me say that the government sector spend a lot of money and effort into communication programs and efforts, but it cannot cover all population. Also, it fails to directly and accurately, objectively to communicate with the key audiences of the public policies and the public services. Also, the many kind of disinformation, the phenomenon and the fake news and hate speech, the overturn the democratic the discussion and the debate and the policy dialogue in the recent days. So all of these things are very important and the issue to the public managers and even civil servants in the public sector. So the OECD used the term and the framework and the theoretical, the ideas of open government. So the Korea is the next year, the public service, the communication, the ministries and the head of communication and the central government and the local government and adopt an open government principles in terms of making reforms and a new kind of services and a public service communication. Open government is very useful and very important to the European countries and the advanced countries and even South Korea. Open government is defined as a culture of governance based on innovative and sustainable public policies and practices inspired by principles of transparency and accountability, integrity, and participation. So the most of communication services in the public sector must be aligned with these four concepts. The next year, especially OECD, the member state, and the South Korea. Skip it. So you can see, as you can see from this, the visual, the chart, and the figure. Actually, it's in the government sector, the use and the data and portal services and a website and social media as a way of making a relationship with the citizens and the policy stakeholders. Recently, the citizens and the private sector and academia and the civil society at the core of policy making and the policy dialogue and the public governance. Also in the legislative, executive, and the local government and the judicial government, they work together, horizontally, sometimes vertically, the width, the core of citizens and the private sector, academia, and the civil services. So anyways, this is really important to make a good the dialogue and democratic process of sharing the ideas and the experiences and the insight to design public services and public policies. But we are very concerned. One method would be good. One method would be necessary. One would be mostly effective and efficiently in terms of communicating with the public and the key stakeholders in the process of policy making. We are having an observation of the three types of public communication. The first is information, and the second part is a consultation, and the last is engagement. So this part must be integrated into seamlessly and gradually, eventually, the policy process. For example, the Ministry of the Interior is the key lion government of using and managing the services of citizen participation. In general, the Ministry of the Information and Communication and dealing with the information services. But the information services must be integrative, jointly the working together with the services and the programs of a citizen participation, because the citizens are sometimes very confused and very overloaded about these two, the dissected and fragmented services. So the OECD member states are trying to integrate the citizen participation services into communication services in terms of making it effective and efficient in operations of a government communication service. That is very, I think it's all of you very familiar as open government partnerships. Anyway, the open government partnership is closely working with the government sector and the civil services societies to emphasize the role of the partnership, the making and the building maintenance between the state and the public officers by using information and citizen participation and the professionalism in the public sector. The last thing is the technology. So the Korea is making very new fashion the way of the working together with the citizens based on this paradigm, and we're working the mechanism and open government in Korea. We are running a government services and a social value oriented government. So the left part is a participation and a cooperation, a very important concept too, to sustain the public value oriented the government in South Korea. And Korea government is trying to make a huge increase in the public trust through the use of the participation services and the media services and the public communication services in the era of digital transformation. I think this is the very interesting statistics to you. The Korea is below the average of the European continent and the OECD countries as in terms of a social consultation. So we need to make more effort to increase the quality of a social consultation in the public sector. Also, we need to make more effort to increase the access to information for the citizens. We are #1 countries open government data and digital government and e-government services, but the citizens are the less likely to use and adopt and apply the open government data and website services and social media services into inform the policy communication and inform decision making in the public sector. Also, yes, we are slightly below the European countries and OECD member states in terms of policy communication. This is very striking to me, to you. The participation and competency in South Korea is below the average, but we are trying to enhance the confidence and expertise and the educational experiences in participating in the process of designing public policies and designing public services. And recently, the media has been the good in South Korea in comparison with European countries and OECD member state. But anyway, so let me repeat that we are living in a disruptive technology-driven ecosystem, which making very confused and very distrustful messages and information. So we can call it disinformation and fake news. So the Korea trying to, and the European countries and advanced countries trying to come up with the better policy responses and regulatory responses to fight against disinformation and fake news. But anyway, this is very important, the mission to you, and we need to make a good the idea systems and policy systems to fight against disinformation in the upcoming disruptive technology-driven society. So the increasing importance of online social platforms affecting how government interact with the public, as while the threats posed by disinformation, hate speech, and not novel, the new technology to raise important implications related to trust in institutions and the national security and even democratic stability. So let me recap and summarize the points addressed in my the presentation. There are 4 emphases I would like to share before I say goodbye. The first part is awareness is really important. As we need to be aware the communication, the consequence of the public communication and media service in our democratic society and public governance. So actually, the governmental officials, they should be more responsible and they should be more professional in dealing with the information design, information delivery, and the information platform and the information the services in public sector. Also, this is very unclear between the political communication and the policy communication. So actually, next years, and the KDI school and the OECD are willing to define and the clear cut the distinctions between the political and policy communication. The second is the skills. The skill set is very important to public managers in terms of the good manners and a good method and a good techniques in terms of communicating with the publics. So basically, I think it's NHI in South Korea and other the institutions related to the public civil servant capacity building that must be able to teach and educate and cultivate the functions and the confidence and the skill set of communication and the media so in terms of the good governance and trust building in the public sector. Third one is coordination. So the government sector demonstrates sometimes the inability to develop the coherent and well-organized communication messages. A ministry, the voice a certain type of information, different types of organizations, and the ministry, the voice totally different. The kind of ideas and information and data and evidence. Sometimes the citizens are very perplexed and confused and lost the confidence in the government services and the government the communication. So this is really important. So the United Kingdom, the UK Cabinet Office established very strong the body of the government communication, the service. So this is the centralized organization, the centralized piece of the making the from decision, okay, and the monitoring and the evaluating the public service communication and the information services. I think it's in the OECD member state and even South Korea, the benchmarking and the UK, the government communication service. The last thing is in the disinformation. From the citizen side, the citizens must be much stronger, okay, in the using public information and how to fight against the disinformation. And so the government sector the help the citizens nurturing and cultivating the civic media and information literacy to the fight against the disinformation. So I think it's the educational the intervention programs must be very helpful in terms of making the media and information literacy for the general public. Let me say that public communication is really important.
Professor Lee,
yep.
I'm very sorry, but you have used up your time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So
can you wrap up in 1 minute?
Yeah, yes, 1 minute. Okay, thank you. So to regain a citizen trust in public institution, and to enhance policy making and service design and service delivery, and to promote an inclusive growth, especially the marginalized groups and the young population. The last is to strengthen a democracy and a resilient and a society, public communication and a media the ecosystem strategically designed and strategically operated. The very important to manage the communication, the governance and the ecosystem strategically. So the KDI school are more willing to study the better ideas and the better solutions to be shared with you the next time. Thank you.